I woke at 4 in the afternoon, my new normal. Night shift suited widows. Fewer questions, less pity. Less pretending to be whole when you're broken clean through. I dressed in the dimming December light, pinning my hair with movements so automatic I didn't need to think. That was the trick. Don't think, just move. Button the uniform, lace the boots. Walk to the hospital like you're not walking through a life that no longer fits. The hospital bulletin board caught me before I'd even removed my coat. 3 days until New Year's Eve. Sarah's name was already penciled in for Christmas Day with a note in her cheerful handwriting, family. Dinner coverage needed evening shift. Below that, New Year's Eve overnight remained blank. 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. 12 hours of other people's celebrations bleeding through the hospital walls while I kept my head down. And hands busy. I took the pen, wrote my name, Elizabeth Bennett. The ink looked too dark against the white paper. Too permanent. Someone gasped behind me. I didn't turn around. They thought I was noble, sacrificing my holiday so others could celebrate with family. Let them think it. The truth was uglier. I was terrified of midnight, of champagne toasts and kisses, and everyone shouting about new beginnings while I was still trapped in the ending. Thomas dying in the ranching accident. His last breath 6 months ago. His last words, live, Elizabeth, promise me. I'd promised, then promptly learned I was a liar. My cabin smelled like disuse when I returned that evening to gather a few things before my shift. 1 plate in the sink, 1 cup. I'd stopped setting the table 6 months ago. Stopped cooking real meals. Soup from a can. Eaten standing at the counter because sitting in his empty chair made my chest ache in ways I couldn't name. His laugh used to fill this space, big and booming and impossible to ignore. He'd pull me into dancing in the kitchen. No music needed. Just his off-key humming and my protests that always dissolved into laughter. I didn't let myself think about that anymore. The hospital became my salvation after he died. Clear problems with clear solutions. Fix the bone, stitch the wound, cool the fever. Nothing required my heart, just my hands, my competent, steady, emotionally distant hands. 6 months. I'd perfected the art of being too busy to grieve. If I stopped moving, I'd shatter. So I kept moving. Other widows joined church groups, quilting circles, Sunday socials. I joined the overnight rotation. Grief had different uniforms. Mine was starched white cotton and a nurse's cap pinned just so. People said time heals. They lied. Time just taught you to function broken. Head nurse Patterson found me restocking supplies before my shift. Elizabeth, she said, concern thick in her voice. Are you sure about New Year's? You've worked every holiday since... She trailed off. Since Thomas died. Since I became the hospital ghost. Haunting the night shift. Avoiding anything that looked like living. I'm sure, I told her, and I was 12 hours where celebration couldn't touch me. 12 hours where being alone was expected, not pitied. Perfect. I reported at 7 p.m. expecting solitude. The hospital at night belonged to the sick and dying, and those of us who preferred shadows to light. Instead, Dr. James Mitchell was already there, rolling his sleeves with movements so precise they seemed rehearsed. My stomach dropped. I'd requested this shift for the aloneness, the quiet, the refuge from people who meant well but saw right through my careful masks. Not company, especially not his company. I'd worked with Dr. Mitchell maybe 4 times in 6 months. Brief, professional interactions I'd kept deliberately forgettable. But now, standing in the lamplight with nowhere to hide, I noticed details I'd been blocking out. The way his hands gentled when he touched a patient's shoulder. How he spoke to frightened children like they held wisdom he needed. The shadows under his eyes that matched mine. The fact that he was here, voluntarily, on New Year's Eve instead of anywhere else. He appeared at the nurse's station before I'd finished tying my apron. 2 cups of coffee, steam rising in the cool air. Handed me one without asking if I wanted it. Needed it. Preferred tea, just assumed. Going to be a long night, he said. Not a question. A statement. Like he knew something I didn't. Or maybe like he knew exactly what I knew, that we were both here because everywhere else hurt worse. I took the cup because refusing felt more intimate than accepting. The coffee was black. Bitter. The way I'd learned to make it after Thomas left. When I'd forgotten sugar existed. Forgotten sweetness was possible. When had Dr. Mitchell noticed how I took my coffee? I prefer working holidays. I said, defensive, building walls with words. He paused, looked at me with eyes that had seen too much and somehow not enough. So do I, he said quietly. The way he said it, there was weight there. History folded into 2 syllables. Grief recognizes grief, even when we're both pretending to be fine. The patients began arriving before I could retreat to safer ground. 8 p.m. brought Jack Murphy, a widower cowboy with a broken arm and gruff kindness that reminded me of my father. 9 p.m. brought Clara, a young widow, 8 months pregnant. Her false labor pains nothing compared to her terror. Her father hovered, helpless in the way men are when women suffer. 10 p.m. brought Lucy. The orphanage matron carried her through the door, the child's body burning with fever. 12 children sick, the matron said, her face gray with exhaustion. She's the worst. Lucy couldn't have been more than 6. Dark hair plastered to her forehead with sweat. Eyes glassy with delirium. Calling for her mama in a voice that cracked something in my chest I'd been keeping carefully sealed. I tried to maintain professional distance, efficient, clinical. Check vitals, administer medication, cool cloths for the fever. But Lucy's cries pierced through my armor. I sat beside her bed longer than necessary, one hand on her forehead, whispering nonsense comfort. When I looked up, Dr. Mitchell was watching, not judging, understanding. Somehow, that was worse. 11 p.m. brought Mr. Harrison, an elderly widower with pneumonia. His granddaughter Emma's worry thick as the winter fog pressing against the windows. By 11:30, I was managing 4 critical patients simultaneously. Lucy's fever spiked despite my efforts. Clara's anxiety made her false labor intensify. Mr. Harrison struggled for each breath. Jack's pain medication needed adjusting. My hands shook. I couldn't remember the last time I'd eaten. Dr. Mitchell appeared at my side without being summoned. Tell me what you need, he said. The words were simple. The offer beneath them wasn't. And the terrible thing, I almost told him the truth. I need help. The words tasted like failure. I'd handled emergencies alone before, prided myself on competence that needed no assistance. But 4 patients, all critical, all needing me at once, even I had limits. I expected judgment, doubt. The subtle disappointment of men who assume women can't handle pressure instead. Dr. Mitchell just nodded. You have it. Already moving toward Mr. Harrison's bed, we fell into rhythm. I didn't know we could find. He managed the elderly man's labored breathing while I coaxed Lucy's fever down with cool cloths and whispered promises. He reassured Clara with a gentleness that made her father's shoulders drop from his ears. I adjusted Jack's medication with hands that had stopped shaking the moment I'd admitted I needed help. No discussion, just synchronicity. Like we'd done this before. Like my 6 months of solitude had always been meant to lead to this partnership I hadn't asked for and didn't want to need. Something unexpected began happening around us. Jack noticed Lucy crying, delirious and terrified in her fever. From his bed, broken arms splinted and elevated, he started performing rope tricks with his good hand. One-handed magic that made the child's eyes focus, her cries soften into wonder. "Watch this, little darlin'," Jack said, his weathered cowboy voice warm as summer. My granddaddy taught me this one. Clara's father pulled a harmonica from his pocket, started playing soft, gentle melodies that filled the ward with something other than fear. The music was medicine of a different kind, treating souls instead of bodies. Emma, Mr. Harrison's granddaughter, opened the basket she'd brought. Homemade cookies, fresh bread, preserves that smelled like summer preserved in glass. Started offering them around to everyone, patients, families, even me. "You haven't eaten," she said, pressing a cookie into my hand with grandmother firmness, despite being younger than me. They were building something I couldn't name, didn't want to name. Community springing up in a hospital ward like wildflowers through cracked earth. I kept working, checking vitals, adjusting IVs, documenting symptoms in my careful handwriting, professional, distant. But the laughter reached me anyway. The harmonica melodies. The rope tricks making Lucy giggle despite her fever. The kindness happening without my permission. My practiced efficiency faltered. Emma checked the clock on the wall. 5 minutes to midnight. Jack grinned despite his pain. We counting down or what? Can't let the new year sneak up on us. I planned to ignore it. Keep working through midnight like it was any other minute. But Dr. Mitchell appeared beside me with fresh coffee, his presence quiet as snow. "Take a breath, Elizabeth," he said. "Even nurses are allowed to acknowledge midnight." The way he said my name, not Nurse Bennett, not ma'am, but Elizabeth, something cracked in my carefully constructed walls. Against every intention, I was swept in. The countdown started. Patients, families, Dr. Mitchell. Me, all of us counting down together in a frontier hospital ward that smelled like carbolic and hope. 3, 2, 1. Happy New Year. Strangers embracing. Lucy laughing. Fever flushed, but alive. Clara crying happy tears. Mr. Harrison whispering gratitude to whatever God had given him another year. Jack making ridiculous noises that sent Lucy into delighted giggles. And me, standing there with my coffee cup cooling in my hands, realizing I'd just spent the last 4 hours being part of something I'd been running from for 6 months. Community, connection, life happening in the spaces between heartbeats. The countdown happened without my permission, like joy, like healing, like everything I'd been trying to control by working myself to exhaustion. The ward settled after midnight, but differently than I'd expected. Not into silence. Into quiet conversation, gentle laughter, the sound of people being together. I retreated to the nurse's station. Shaken in ways I couldn't explain, Dr. Mitchell followed. Didn't speak, just sat in the chair beside mine, close enough that I could hear him breathing. And for the first time in 6 months, I didn't feel alone. I felt terrified. The hours after midnight didn't follow any script I knew. I'd expected patients to settle into sleep, families to leave, the ward to empty into the familiar quiet I'd been craving. Instead, the hospital transformed into something I'd never seen, a gathering that refused to end. Jack kept Lucy entertained with stories while I changed her IV. His gravelly voice spinning tales about horses and cattle drives and the time he got thrown into a creek by an ornery bull. The child hung on every word, her fever making her eyes too bright, but her fear gone. He was doing my job, comforting, caring, creating calm. I should have resented the intrusion. Instead, I was grateful. When had I become so tired? Clara's father played his harmonica at 2 a.m, when his daughter's anxiety spiked again. Gentle melodies that shouldn't have worked better than medicine, but somehow did. The music wrapped around us, all patients and nurse and doctor, like a blanket knitted from sound. Emma organized the food from her basket into an impromptu buffet on the supply table, offering sustenance to anyone who passed, creating hospitality in a place designed for sickness. They were doing what I'd forgotten how to do, building community from nothing but presence and kindness. Dr. Mitchell brought me food without asking. Set a plate beside my paperwork bread. Cheese. One of Emma's cookies. "You haven't eaten," he said. When had he noticed I'd been so careful to seem fine? To need nothing? To be the competent nurse who had no vulnerability showing through her uniform. He saw through it. Worse, he cared. We moved around each other like dancers who'd practiced for years. He anticipated what I needed before I asked gauze, medication, an extra pair of hands to hold a patient steady. I did the same for him. Our partnership wordless and unnervingly natural. The kind of synchronicity I'd had with Thomas in our kitchen. Our life. Our marriage. I'd thought that died with him. Finding it again here. With a man I barely knew. Felt like betrayal and relief in equal measure. During a quiet moment at 3 a.m, everyone finally sleeping, Dr. Mitchell asked, "How long have you been working holidays?" The question was casual. The weight beneath it wasn't. 6 months, I admitted. The truth. Simple and devastating. He looked at his hands. Capable hands that had saved lives and couldn't save the one that mattered most. 5 years. The number settled between us like a shared confession. 5 years of this hiding in medicine, running from life, choosing loneliness over risk. I'd been seeing my future if I didn't change. The thought made my chest ache, worse than grief. "I thought if I kept moving," I whispered, "I wouldn't have to feel it." "Does it work?" His voice was gentle, knowing. "No." The admission cost me. "But stopping feels impossible." He nodded. Didn't offer platitudes about time healing or God's plan or any of the useless comfort people had tried to give me at Thomas's funeral. Just understanding. Sometimes that's the greater gift. "My husband," I said, surprising myself. "Thomas, ranching accident. 6 months ago." "My wife," he replied quietly. "Margaret. Childbirth complications. 5 years. We didn't elaborate. Didn't need to. Grief has its own language. We were both fluent. I'd forgotten what it felt like to work with someone instead of alongside them. The difference was terrifying. Partnership required trust. Trust required vulnerability. Vulnerability led to loss. I knew that math by heart. When the shift ended at 7. Dawn painting the windows gold and pink. I planned my escape. Quick exit. Return to my cabin, my controlled solitude, my safe half-life. But Lucy's fever broke at 6:30, and she asked me to stay until the orphanage matron arrived. Her small hand in mine, still too warm, but cooling. I stayed, told myself it was professional duty. Knew I was lying. Jack caught my eye as I sat beside Lucy's bed. "You're good at this," he said. "The caring part. Don't see that as much as you'd think." I didn't know how to respond, so I said nothing. "My wife died 2 years back," he added, voice matter of fact. "Cancer." I thought work would fix the missing. Turns out all it fixes is the calendar. Days pass. Missing stays. The words hit like a fist to the sternum. I walked home at 8. The sun risen. The world awake. My cabin waited, empty and familiar. But for the first time in 6 months, I wondered, what if empty isn't the same as safe? What if I've been confusing the two? The thought followed me into restless sleep. 3 days later, I returned for my regular shift. Jack was still admitted, his arm healing slower than expected. He asked if I'd play checkers with him during my break. I should have said no. Maintained boundaries. Professional distance. The walls I'd built so carefully. Yes, I heard myself say. I didn't know why, or I did, and wouldn't admit it. We played in silence for 10 minutes, just the click of pieces against the board, the rhythm of moves and counter-moves. Then Jack cleared his throat. My wife used to beat me at checkers every time, he said. Said I was too impatient, always going for the quick win instead of the smart one. I fumbled a piece. It clattered to the floor. That Dr. Mitchell, he told me about his wife when he set my arm, talked about her like she was still in the room with him. I figure you got your own story, too. Way you work yourself ragged like you're running from something that's gonna catch you eventually. My throat closed. I don't want to talk about it. My voice broke anyway. Don't have to, Jack said with cowboy gentleness. Just wanted you to know you ain't the only one who thought work would fix grief. He paused, moving a checker piece with his good hand. Spoiler, it don't. Jack had looked at me with such kindness. Not pity. Kindness. The difference mattered. Pity said, poor you. Kindness said, I see you. I'd forgotten what being seen felt like. Dr. Mitchell started bringing coffee regularly after that, not as a gesture, as routine. Every shift. 2 cups. Black and bitter, the way we both preferred it. He asked me about my nursing training. My hometown back east, favorite books. Normal conversation I'd forgotten how to have. I answered cautiously, testing each word like frozen lake ice, one careful step, then another, waiting for the crack. There's a town meeting about expanding the hospital next Tuesday, he said one evening, his tone deliberately casual. Would you come? Your nursing perspective would help the planning. It wasn't a date. It was professional, community service. So why did yes feel like stepping off a cliff? All right, I said. I'll be there. Tuesday arrived. I changed my dress 3 times. Told myself I was being ridiculous. Went anyway. The meeting was in the church hall, crowded with townspeople and their opinions. I sat beside Dr. Mitchell, acutely aware of his presence, of the way people looked at us sitting together. When the mayor asked about medical needs, I spoke, explained what the hospital required: more beds, better ventilation, a dedicated children's ward. My voice was steady, professional, but my heart hammered, like I was doing something dangerous. Maybe I was. Afterward, Dr. Mitchell offered to walk me home. 6 blocks through darkness, our footsteps echoing on the wooden sidewalks. He talked about the meeting, about expansion plans, about hope for the town's future. I listened, terrified by how much I wanted this. The ordinariness, the companionship, the not alone at my door. He didn't push, didn't ask to come in, just said, thank you for coming tonight. Elizabeth, your voice matters. I hope you know that. Then he was gone. Walking back into the darkness, I went inside, closed the door, locked it, and for the first time in 6 months, I cried, really cried. Not from sadness, from the terrifying recognition that I didn't want to be alone anymore. I sat at my table, the one I'd stopped using. 1 chair pulled out, Thomas's empty. I cried until I was hollow, until the tears ran out, until the only thing left was a question I'd been avoiding. What was I so afraid of loving again, or discovering I already had? Morning came. I was exhausted, red-eyed, cracked open. But something had shifted in the darkness. I brewed coffee, Set out 2 cups before I realized what I was doing. Stared at them, one for me, one for Hope. I didn't drink from the second cup, but I didn't put it away either. The influenza outbreak hit on a Monday morning. Sarah arrived at the hospital gray-faced, her usual cheerfulness extinguished. "Influenza," she said. "The boarding house, 12 people sick and getting worse." By noon, every bed was full. By evening, we were setting up cots in the hallways. The outbreak spread through the frontier town like wildfire through dry grass close quarters. Harsh winter. Limited resources creating perfect conditions for disaster. My shift started at 7. By midnight, I'd stopped tracking hours. Just moved from patient to patient. Bed to bed. Crisis to crisis. Dr. Mitchell worked beside me. So did Sarah and the other nurses. All of us running on coffee and determination. Hour 12 blurred into hour 24. The orphanage matron brought Lucy back. 12 children sick, she said, her voice breaking. She's the worst. Lucy's fever raged higher than before, her small body shaking with chills despite the blankets piled on her. She recognized me through the delirium, reached for my hand. "Miss Elizabeth," she whispered. "I'm scared." I held her hand, sat beside her bed when I should have been checking other patients. Couldn't move, couldn't leave her. This child who'd already survived losing her parents shouldn't have to fight alone. My hands shook from exhaustion, my vision blurred. I didn't care, couldn't stop. If I stopped, someone might die. If I stopped, I'd have to feel the terror pressing against my ribs. Easier to keep moving, old pattern, new emergency. Hour 40 brought Dr. Mitchell to Lucy's bedside. He found me there, still holding her hand, whispering stories I barely remembered, fairy tales my mother had told me. Promises I had no right to make. "Elizabeth," he said gently, "you need rest. She needs me. She needs you healthy. Take 2 hours. I'll stay with her. I'll call you if anything changes." I started to argue. The words died when I saw his face exhausted but immovable. He wouldn't budge on this. "You'd do the same for me," he said quietly, and I realized he was right. I would. When had that happened? When had his well-being started mattering as much as a patient's 2 hours? I conceded. It felt like surrender, like trust, like everything I'd been protecting myself against. While I slept fitfully in the nurses' quarters, the New Year's Eve community mobilized. Emma Harrison organized food deliveries for hospital staff. Jack Murphy, arm healed enough, transported supplies on his wagon. Clara's father played gentle harmonica in the children's ward, his music soothing, frightened. Feverish patience. The community we'd accidentally built that one night had become something real. Something that showed up when needed. I woke at hour 48 in a panic, ran to Lucy's bed expecting the worst. She was sleeping peacefully, fever broken, breathing easy. Dr. Mitchell sat beside her, keeping vigil like he'd promised. Relief crashed through me so hard my knees buckled. He caught my arm, steadied me. "Coffee?" he asked. We sat in the quiet hallway, surrounded by sleeping patients and the soft sounds of healing. He handed me a cup. Our fingers brushed. Neither of us pulled away. "You can't save everyone by destroying yourself," he said. "I know that." My voice was small. "Do you—" He paused. "I spent 3 years trying. Margaret died saving our baby. Childbirth complications, she bled out while I stood there. A doctor who couldn't save his own wife. The baby died 3 hours later. And I thought if I just worked hard enough, long enough, perfectly enough, I could earn their forgiveness for surviving. His honesty cracked me open like an egg. Thomas told me to live. I whispered. Last thing he said in the hospital bed. Live. Elizabeth. Promise me. And I've been doing everything but... Maybe we could try. Dr. Mitchell said carefully, together. The living part. I looked at him. Really looked. Saw a man as wounded and healing as me. As terrified and hopeful. I don't know how anymore. I admitted, neither do I. He took my hand. But we could learn. I didn't pull away. The outbreak lasted another week. Patients recovered. Beds emptied. The crisis passed like a fever breaking, leaving exhaustion and relief in equal measure. The hospital returned to its normal rhythm. Regular shifts, routine emergencies. The manageable chaos of frontier medicine, and I panicked. Crisis had allowed me to avoid the real question pressing against my ribs. What happens now, when there's no emergency to hide behind when it's just life? Demanding I make choices about living it, I'd let Dr. Mitchell close. Let the patients matter. Let myself hope. Hope was dangerous. Hope meant having something to lose again. I requested a transfer to day shift. Different schedule than Dr. Mitchell. Clean break. When head nurse Patterson asked why, I said it was for better coverage balance. We both knew I was lying. Request denied, she said gently. We're short-staffed on nights. Elizabeth, I need you there. Trapped. The word echoed in my chest like a heartbeat. Thursday midnight found me unable to sleep, unable to breathe in my cabin's familiar walls. I packed a bag. Not much. I'd lived light since Thomas died. A few dresses, my nursing credentials, money saved from 6 months of working every available shift, enough to start over somewhere else. A town where no one knew me, where I hadn't let anyone close, where I could go back to safe, controlled, alone. I stood at the door, bag in hand, ready to vanish into the night. Then I saw Thomas's photograph on the mantel. His smile, his eyes that had seen me completely and loved me anyway. Live, Elizabeth, he'd said. But I don't know how to live without you, I told the photograph. My voice broke. I don't know how to love someone new without betraying you. Silence answered. Of course it did. The dead don't speak, no matter how much we need them to. I don't know how to keep half living either. I whispered. The words settled into truth. I looked at my packed bag, at the door, at Thomas's photograph. At the cabin, I'd turned into a shrine to grief. 5 years? Dr. Mitchell had said. 5 years of hiding in work, running from connection, choosing existence over life. Did I want that? Did Thomas want that for me? I set down the bag, walked out the door, not to flee, but to face. The hospital was 6 blocks through winter darkness. My feet knew the path, had walked it hundreds of times while my mind was elsewhere. Now I was present, aware, terrified. Dr. Mitchell was at the nurse's station, finishing paperwork. He looked up when I entered. Didn't seem surprised. Maybe grief always knows when grief is ready to run. I almost left. I told him, no preamble, just truth. Packed a bag, almost ran. What stopped you? His voice was calm, like he'd been waiting for this conversation. I don't want to spend 5 years hiding like you did. Like I've been doing. My voice steadied. I don't want to wake up half alive. What do you want? Elizabeth? The question cracked me open. What did I want? I'd stopped asking myself 6 months ago. Stopped wanting anything beyond surviving the next shift. I want to stop being afraid. The words came faster now, tumbling out. I want to eat dinner with people instead of standing at my kitchen counter. I want to celebrate holidays instead of working through them. My voice broke. Deep breath. Truth. I want to risk loving people again, even though it terrifies me. Dr. Mitchell crossed the room. Stopped close enough that I could touch him if I chose. Didn't close the distance. Gave me the choice. What if we risked it together? He said softly. Not rushing. Not replacing what we lost. Just choosing to live again. What if I can't do it? I whispered. What if you can? The question hung between us like a door I could open or close. I didn't answer that night. Couldn't make promises I wasn't sure I could keep. But I didn't run. Didn't pack. Didn't request another transfer. I walked home at 3 a.m, alone but not lonely. The difference mattered. In my cabin, I brewed coffee in the darkness. Set out 2 cups again, one for me, one for possibility. This time, I imagined filling the second one. Imagined Dr. Mitchell James. His name was James, sitting at my table. Imagined laughter in these rooms again. Conversation. Life. The images didn't feel like betrayal anymore. They felt like choice. Like living. Like keeping my promise to Thomas. I didn't sleep. Just sat with the question James had asked. What if living was possible? What if I'd been confusing fear with impossibility? Friday evening. I stood outside James's house with my heart hammering against my ribs. I'd been thinking for 2 days straight. About what I wanted. About what Thomas had meant when he said, live. About the difference between surviving and actually living. About choosing deliberately instead of letting fear choose for me. I knocked. He opened the door, surprise and hope warring on his face. Still in his work clothes, sleeves rolled up, looking as exhausted as I felt. I've been thinking, I said, about what you said, about learning to live again. James waited, patient, hopeful, terrified. I saw it all in his eyes. I took a breath. This was it. My choice. My life. I don't want to date, I said. Not yet. Maybe not for a while. I saw him process this. Accept it. His expression didn't close, just shifted into deeper listening. But I want to build something different, I continued, words coming faster now. Community? Like what happened New Year's Eve, but intentional this time, not an accident, a choice. What do you mean? He stepped back, inviting me inside. I entered his house for the first time. Simple, clean, lived in, but lonely. Like mine. I stood in his living room and explained the vision taking shape in my mind. Dinner. Once a week. Us. And whoever wants to come. Jack, Emma, Clara's family, the orphanage children, Lucy, anyone who needs family. The words tumbled out now. Make connection the point, not the accident. Because loneliness isn't cured by avoiding people. It's cured by risking connection, deliberately, together. James's face transformed. Understanding bloomed there, and something brighter joy. Like a family dinner, he said slowly. But family we choose. Exactly. I felt certainty settle in my bones. Felt rightness in a way I hadn't since Thomas died. Because I've been alone for 6 months and you've been alone for 5 years. And that's too much. Alone. When do we start? James asked. I smiled. First real smile in months. It felt strange on my face, like wearing clothes that used to fit. This Sunday, my cabin, I'll cook. I'll bring dessert. His voice was warm. Then, carefully, Elizabeth. This is brave. What you're doing. I shook my head. No. Brave was Thomas's last word to me. This is just finally listening. Sunday morning arrived too fast and too slow. I woke early, nervous energy propelling me out of bed. Started cleaning my cabin, really cleaning it, not just maintaining. Opened curtains I'd kept closed for months. Aired out rooms I'd been suffocating along with myself. I set my table with Thomas's good dishes, the ones I'd packed away because looking at them hurt. Set 6 places, then 8, then 10. Panicked 3 times while cooking. Nearly called it off twice. But I kept cooking, kept preparing, kept choosing. James arrived first with apple pie and steady presents. Then Jack with wildflowers from his ranch. Figured your table could use some pretty. Emma and Mr. Harrison. The old man walking stronger now. Clara with her father and her new baby girl. Born healthy 2 weeks ago. They'd named her Hope. Lucy came with the orphanage matron, chattering about the rope tricks Jack had been teaching her. Sarah arrived with her husband, surprised by the invitation, but pleased. My cabin empty for 6 months filled with voices, laughter, life. We squeezed around my table, sat on the floor, balanced plates on knees. It was chaos. Lucy spilled milk. Jack told terrible jokes. Clara's baby cried. Emma's laugh was too loud. Someone suggested music and the harmonica came out. It was perfect. After dinner. Washing dishes with James while everyone else talked in the living room. I paused. Hands in soapy water, looking at this man who'd become essential without my permission. I thought having people in Thomas's space would feel like betrayal, I said quietly. But it doesn't. It feels like honoring him, like finally understanding what he meant. James dried a dish carefully. Margaret would like you, the way you care for people. Thomas would like you. I met his eyes. The way you're patient with my fear. We smiled at each other, 2 wounded people learning to live past loss. Weeks passed. The dinners became routine, weekly, then twice weekly when people asked for more. I started a game night checkers with Jack, cards with Emma. Silly children's games with Lucy that made everyone laugh. James and I walked home together after shifts now, talking about patience, medicine, books we'd read, childhoods we remembered. Everything except what we were building. We both knew. Didn't need to name it yet. 3 weeks after the first dinner. Walking home from the hospital under stars so bright, they hurt. James reached for my hand, paused, waited for permission. I looked at his hand. Scarred from medicine. Gentle in every gesture, offering, not demanding. I took it, not promising forever, not pledging my heart. Just taking his hand because I chose to. Is this okay? He asked. Yes, I said, and meant it completely. This is okay. I'm writing this 5 years later because I want you to understand something healing isn't linear. Love isn't simple. Community doesn't cure grief, but it makes grief bearable. It makes life possible. It makes joy real again, even when you thought joy died with the person you loved. James and I married 2 years after that first Sunday dinner. Small ceremony in the church, our chosen family present. Lucy was the flower girl adopted by Jack Murphy 6 months earlier. Both of them needing family and finding it in each other. Clara's father played harmonica. Emma cried happy tears. Mr. Harrison gave me away because my own father had passed when I was young. We exchanged vows we wrote ourselves, not about forever. We both knew forever was a promise no one could keep. About choosing each day. About partnership through grief and joy. About learning to live together. We still work at the hospital. Still take overnight shifts sometimes, but we built boundaries that didn't exist before. Work doesn't consume our lives anymore. We have dinner together every night at a table that seats two. Real dinner, talking about our days, laughing about small things. We celebrate holidays now. Last Christmas, I actually decorated the cabin, baked cookies, sang carols with our Sunday dinner family. Thomas would have loved seeing me that way again. I still miss him. Some days, acutely. Anniversaries hurt. His birthday, the day he died. But I've learned that grief and joy can coexist. That loving James doesn't erase Thomas. That my heart is bigger than I knew scarred. But bigger. I can hold both the man I lost and the life I'm building. The Sunday dinners continue 5 years later. Every week without fail. They're chaotic now, 20 people some nights. More when someone brings a friend. Children running underfoot. Multiple conversations happening at once. Jack and Lucy bringing stories from the ranch. Clara's Hope showing everyone her drawings. Mr. Harrison teaching the children chess. Emma pregnant with her first baby. Sarah and her husband are regulars now. So are half a dozen other families we've gathered along the way. The community we built from strangers and grief and deliberate choice has rippled outward. Lucy thrives with Jack found the father she needed, gave him purpose beyond grief. Clara's father's music shop is thriving. The harmonica music that helped his daughter becoming his livelihood. Emma runs the hospital's patient support program now, connecting families with resources. Building community is her job. What we started that New Year's Eve night has touched lives we'll never know about. James talks about Margaret naturally now. Their daughter would have been 6. We visit Margaret's grave sometimes together. It doesn't diminish what we have. Instead, it honors what was. He's learned to rest, to play, to let himself be happy without guilt. We're both learning. Together, daily. Imperfectly. Here's what I learned. That long New Year's Eve night, 5 years ago, loneliness isn't cured by avoiding connection. It's cured by risking it. Despite grief, despite fear. Despite the absolute certainty that loving means eventual loss, we risk it anyway. Because the alternative is half living, and we were meant for more than that. Medicine taught me to diagnose, treat, heal. But community taught me to live. There's a difference. Healing happens in the body. Living happens in the heart. Tonight is New Year's Eve again. 6 years since that night, I worked the overnight shift and accidentally found family. I'm not working tonight. I'm hosting. 30 people in our home. We bought a bigger house 2 years ago, built for gathering. Lucy's practicing rope tricks for the midnight show. Jack teaching her with infinite patience. Clara's Hope is toddling around, getting into everything. Emma's baby is kicking visibly under her dress. Sarah brought her famous pie. The harmonica music is already starting. At 11:55, James finds me in the kitchen. A quiet moment in the beautiful chaos. Happiest, he asks. I look past him at the living room full of people, the family we built from strangers and grief and deliberate, daily choice. Yes, I say, completely, complicatedly, gratefully true. I'm happy. The countdown begins. We join our community, our chosen family. 3, 2, 1. Happy New Year. When this time, when midnight arrives, I'm not hiding in work, not avoiding celebration, not running from life. I'm present. I'm alive. I'm exactly where I chose to be. Live, Elizabeth. Thomas had said, finally, gratefully, joyfully I am.